there was a store. Now it's become a bodega. And in our neighborhood, there were drug lords and gangs. And one of the leading drug lords and criminals was a guy named Deadeye McKenzie. And he was so deadly and had such a powerful entourage around him that people were afraid even to report him to the police. And so even though he was accused of many crimes, no one had the guts to identify him. Well, one day, a month or so ago, a man looked at Deadeye the wrong way, apparently, and Deadeye pushed him into the Rafael Nunez's bodega. And then when the man got up and looked at Mackenzie pulled out a gun and shot him in the femoral artery. The artery spewed out with blood, and his life was in danger. In fact, he was pronounced dead on arrival when they brought him to the hospital. But miraculously, they stenched the bleed, and they saved the man's life. But Deadeye McKenzie just walked out of the bodega in defiance, believing no one would ever identify him. Well, he was accused of the crime and brought to trial. And there, as he was brought to trial, even the victim was afraid to identify him and said, "I'm not sure if that's the guy or not." But Rafael Nunez, at great risk to himself and his family and his store, stood up, went right in front of the drug lord, pointed his finger in his face, and said, "That's the man who was right in front of me when he shot Mr. Powell." And Mackenzie, I'm happy to say, has just been given the maximum sentence. Finally, after years of criminal activity in my own neighborhood, he's been put where he belongs, thanks to a moral hero, Rafael Nunez. Well, what I'd like to do in closing is to sum up some of the characteristics that I find in moral heroes, in saints. And I've identified 4 or 5 of them. You may find others, or you may disagree with me about some of them. Now, of course, one can be a hero without being a saint, and one can be a saint without being especially heroic. But the two generally go together. People who are unusually moral and committed to the good tend to be the same people who are morally heroic when courage is required. So let me go through the 5 characteristics in closing. The first one is self-discipline or self-control, what the Greeks call, if you know any Greek, sophrosune. It's a minimal virtue that every citizen must possess in civilization, if civilization is to endure. And self-control or discipline is not sufficient for morality. Stalin or terrorists could have to be self-disciplined, but certainly it's a minimal condition for a good life. Someone who can't control him or herself is really self-destructive and a bad news to the society. Admiral Stockdale writes, "Self-discipline was vital to self-respect in the prison camp, which in turn is vital to survival and meaningful participation in a POW organization. Self-indulgence is fatal. Hence, daily ritual seemed essential to mental and spiritual health." And Admiral Stockdale, in exercising and promoting his own self-discipline, would do 400 push-ups a day, even when he had leg irons on, and would feel guilty when he failed to do them. Contrast this with a more self-indulgent culture, where people are couch potatoes or just like hedonistic fixes. And you see that self-discipline is a minimal and basic virtue that makes up this whole construct of being a moral saint or just a morally good person. Now, I think we're losing this reverence for self-discipline, this value of discipline in our culture to some degree. In fact, I think only 2 or 3 large American institutions are succeeding in promoting this minimal condition for success. And they are the military, the Mormon Church, and the Roman Catholic Church. These three institutions, it seems to me, still sufficiently value self-discipline with integrity so as to be able to inculcate it to young people in a world where hedonism and self-indulgence are very pervasive. I was at BYU teaching last year, and though I'm very far from ever being a Mormon, I couldn't help admiring their culture and their strong families and their commitment to the good. That it's nice to be on a campus with such integrity. And when two of the star football players violated the honor code, they weren't just reprimanded, but just before the bowl game, when they were caught and tried fairly, they were expelled from the football team, and BYU lost the bowl game, but it saved its honor, I think. How many universities would expel their leading running back and defensive back just before a bowl game because of moral violations? I can't help praising a school that would put ethics on that high a pedestal where it belongs. And of course, West Point, or the military academies and ROTCs, instill these same values of discipline and courage, which is going to be my second one, in the lives of their students. I'm just so impressed. As someone who was an anti-war protester and very much committed to peace all my life, and still am, I'm just so impressed at the discipline and commitment of the cadets at West Point. And those NROTC students I've met here, midshipmen, give me the same feeling of people who really have their lives together, are disciplined and committed to the good. It's no accident that the regiment at West Point was modeled on that of a Catholic seminary, St. Patrick's College in Maynooth, Ireland. The discipline internalized by the military and by the whole monastic tradition gives its members resources for dealing with life stresses, and which other people in our culture sadly lack. So it's no accident that it produces people like Mother Teresa and Father Colby, and the military produces people like Admiral Stockdale. These are wonderful people produced by institutions that value very highly commitment and self-discipline. Now, the second virtue I've already adumbrated that moral heroes and saints have is courage. Reading the accounts of Socrates' life, we wonder how he could endure the kind of animosity he did. Here was a man who went around barefoot even in the winter, didn't wear shoes, who refused to flee in battle when the Athenians were running away from the Peloponnesians, or the Spartans in the Peloponnesian War, who saved at great risk to himself, saved his comrades like Alcibiades, and who at his trial refused to grovel as most of the condemned did. Instead, when they asked him, "What's the penalty that you deserve that we should give you?" when he was found guilty, in response, he said, "My penalty should be to eat at the athletic dorm, where the best food is served, where the Olympic heroes are served." And of course, that angered his accusers even more, so they condemned him to drink the hemlock. And when he did so comforting his friends and dying with equanimity and with courage. That is, I think, a role model for any of us who face suffering and death. Thirdly, I find in saints, moral saints and heroes, a third virtue. It's their self-control and courage is complemented with practical wisdom, insight and understanding into the contingencies